Welcome back to my channel. Before we begin, if you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our deep dives into the cases that continue to haunt America and the world for decades. Today, we're reopening a file that has remained unsolved for nearly 3 decades. December 25, 1996. Christmas Day in Boulder, Colorado. Inside the Tudor-style mansion at 755 15th Street, the Ramsey family is celebrating what should be a perfect holiday. 6-year-old JonBenet Ramsey, with her blonde curls and bright smile, tears through wrapping paper with pure childhood joy. Her father, John Ramsey, is a successful businessman, president of Access Graphics, a computer services company that has made him a multimillionaire. Her mother, Patsy, a former Miss West Virginia, has channeled her pageant experience into grooming JonBenet for the child beauty circuit. That evening, the Ramseys attend a holiday dinner at the home of Fleet and Priscilla White, close family friends. JonBenet plays with the White children until exhaustion takes over. Around 9:30 p.m., the family heads home. JonBenet falls asleep in the car during the short drive back. John Ramsey carries his sleeping daughter into the house and up the spiral staircase to her second-floor bedroom. Still in her Christmas outfit, JonBenet is tucked into bed. Patsy would later tell investigators that her daughter never stirred, never woke, never made a sound. The house settles into silence. John and Patsy retire to their third-floor master bedroom. Their 9-year-old son, Burke, is in his own room after a long day of celebration. 3 people in the house. Doors locked. The security system not activated, as was the family's habit. Outside, fresh snow covers the lawn and walkways, undisturbed and pristine. Somewhere in the hours between midnight and dawn, in that house with its winding hallways and multiple levels, something unspeakable happens. No neighbors hear screams. No alarms sound. No windows shatter. No footprints appear in the snow leading to or from the property. Yet before the sun rises on December 26, a little girl will be dead in her own basement, and a family will be torn apart by accusations, suspicion, and a mystery that 3 decades of investigation have failed to solve. This is the story of what happened that Christmas night, and the chilling question that still echoes: if no one broke in, then who killed JonBenet Ramsey? 5:52 a.m., December 26, Patsy Ramsey descends the spiral staircase in her home, heading to the kitchen to start her day. At the bottom of the stairs, she finds 3 handwritten pages laid out deliberately on the steps. She picks them up and begins to read. Within seconds, her screams pierce the morning silence. The note claims to be from a small foreign faction that has kidnapped JonBenet. It demands exactly $118,000 for her safe return, delivered in specific denominations, $100,000 in $100 bills and the remaining $18,000 in $20 bills. The writer warns John not to contact police, not to talk to anyone, and threatens to behead JonBenet if the instructions aren't followed precisely. Patsy immediately calls 911. Her voice, frantic and breaking, reports her daughter missing and a ransom note discovered. Boulder police arrive at 5:59 a.m., just 7 minutes after the call. They begin treating the scene as a kidnapping. But something feels wrong from the start. The ransom note is bizarre. At nearly 3 pages, it's the longest ransom note in FBI history. Most kidnappers keep communications brief, worried about being traced or caught. This one rambles, includes movie quotes from films like Ransom and Dirty Harry, and contains oddly personal touches. The writer addresses John by his first name, knows intimate details about his business, and references his Southern common sense. The $118,000 demand is too specific, too coincidental. It matches almost exactly the bonus John received from Access Graphics just weeks earlier. How would a foreign faction know that detail? The note also mentions adequate size attaché for the money, uses peculiar phrasing like hence and attaché, and signs off with victory. SBTC. Letters that have never been definitively explained. Police quickly discover the note was written on a pad from inside the Ramsey home, using a pen from the house. A practice version, with false starts and crossed-out lines, is found in the trash. The writer spent time composing this note, comfortable enough to sit in the home, draft multiple versions, and leave it staged on the stairs. Handwriting analysis becomes critical. Experts examine the note against samples from both John and Patsy. John is quickly excluded. Patsy cannot be ruled out. Some analysts find her handwriting remarkably similar to the note's distinctive style, particularly certain letter formations and spacing patterns. The question becomes inescapable: what kidnapper breaks into a home and spends 20 minutes writing a novel? For nearly 7 hours, the Ramsey home operates under the assumption that JonBenet has been kidnapped. Police officers move through rooms, searching for clues. Friends and family members arrive to support John and Patsy, filling the house with bodies, voices, and unintentional contamination of what should be a controlled crime scene. Burke is whisked away to the White family's home by 8:30 a.m., shielded from the chaos unfolding around him. Detective Linda Arndt is one of the first responders. As the morning drags on with no ransom call, no further contact from the supposed kidnappers, she grows increasingly uneasy. The 10 a.m. deadline mentioned in the note passes without incident. No phone rings. No instructions arrive. The house feels wrong. Around 1 p.m., Detective Arndt makes a decision that will haunt the investigation forever. She asks John Ramsey and Fleet White to search the house again, top to bottom, to see if anything seems out of place. It's a task that should have been completed thoroughly by trained officers hours earlier, but the scene has been mismanaged from the start. John and Fleet begin in the basement. They check a train room where Burke plays. They look in storage areas. Then John opens the door to a small wine cellar, a windowless room often used for storage. He flips on the light. JonBenet is there. John Ramsey lets out a sound that Fleet White will later describe as primal, inhuman. He rushes to his daughter, pulls the white blanket away from her body, and scoops her into his arms. He carries her upstairs, contaminating evidence, destroying the crime scene, acting not as a suspect but as a father who has just found his child dead. Detective Arndt sees him emerge from the basement. JonBenet is stiff with rigor mortis, her skin discolored. Duct tape covers her mouth. Her hands are bound above her head with white cord. Around her neck is a garrote, a crude strangulation device fashioned from nylon cord and the broken handle of a paintbrush. Her body is cold. She has been dead for hours. The kidnapping was a lie. This was never an abduction. This was a murder staged to look like something else, and it happened right here, inside the family's own home. The autopsy of JonBenét Ramsey is performed by Dr. John Meyer, the Boulder County coroner, on December 27, 1996. His findings paint a horrific picture. JonBenet suffered a massive skull fracture, an 8.5-inch linear crack that caused bleeding in her brain and immediate unconsciousness. The blow came from a blunt object, struck with significant force. But death didn't come from the head injury alone. Hours after the skull fracture, while JonBenet lay unconscious but still alive, someone fashioned a garrote from white cord and the handle of Patsy's paintbrush. The device was tightened around her neck until she asphyxiated. The brutality is staggering. Someone waited while a child lay dying, then methodically finished the job. There are signs of vaginal trauma, consistent with digital penetration or insertion of a small object. The coroner cannot determine if this occurred before or after death. Duct tape covered her mouth, though it held no scream since she was already unconscious. Her wrists were bound loosely with cord, more for appearance than restraint. But one detail in the autopsy report shifts the entire investigation. In JonBenet's small intestine, Dr. Meyer finds undigested pineapple. Based on the state of digestion, she consumed it approximately 1 to 2 hours before her death. This pineapple becomes the detail that unravels the family's timeline. Crime scene photographs show a white bowl sitting on the Ramsey kitchen table. Inside are chunks of pineapple in milk, with a large serving spoon resting in the bowl. The bowl is photographed but initially overlooked as investigators focus on the basement and ransom note. Days later, when the autopsy results arrive, detectives return to those photographs with fresh eyes. Fingerprint analysis reveals something damning. Burke's fingerprints are on the bowl. Patsy's prints are there too. But no prints from JonBenet appear on the bowl or spoon, despite the fruit being in her stomach. Investigators confront John and Patsy with this evidence. Both parents insist they did not serve JonBenet pineapple that night. They claim she went straight to bed after arriving home from the Whites' party, never came back downstairs, never ate anything. Patsy is shown the photograph of the bowl. She cannot explain it. She denies placing it on the table. She denies feeding her daughter. The official family story is that everyone went to sleep after arriving home. But the pineapple tells a different story. Someone was awake. Someone was in that kitchen. And JonBenet was with them. Burke Ramsay is 9 years old on the morning his sister is found dead. He becomes the most protected witness in American criminal history, shielded by laws designed to safeguard children from the trauma of aggressive interrogation. But that protection also creates a void, a silence that stretches across nearly 2 decades and fuels endless speculation. On December 26, Burke is removed from the house before JonBenet's body is discovered. He's taken to the White family's home, away from police, away from the media circus already beginning to descend on Boulder. When investigators request to speak with him, the Ramsey attorneys impose strict conditions. No hostile questioning. No pressure. Only child psychologists and specially trained detectives. The first formal interview takes place on January 8, 1997, at a child advocacy center. Dr. Suzanne Bernhard conducts the session using gentle techniques, play therapy, and drawing exercises. Burke is calm, cooperative, and unusually composed for a child who has just lost his sister. He answers questions about his family, his activities on Christmas Day, and what he remembers from that night. When asked to draw a picture of his family, Burke draws his father, his mother, and himself. JonBenet is not included. When the psychologist asks why, Burke offers no clear explanation. He simply didn't include her. The omission is noted in the report. Burke describes hearing his mother's voice that morning, frantic and upset. He says he stayed in his room, pretending to be asleep when his father checked on him. He recalls being taken to the Whites' house and eventually learning that JonBenet was in heaven. His effect throughout the interview is flat. No tears. No visible distress. No anger or confusion. He speaks matter-of-factly, as if describing events that happened to someone else. A second interview occurs months later, in May 1998. Burke is now 11. He recounts similar details but adds that he remembers coming downstairs Christmas night to play with a toy he had assembled earlier. He mentions eating pineapple. But the timeline remains vague, the details sparse. Investigators press gently, but Burke's answers don't shift. Then, for nearly 20 years, Burke Ramsay vanishes from public view. He doesn't give interviews. He doesn't speak at memorials. He doesn't defend himself against the growing whispers that maybe, just maybe, a 9-year-old boy knows more than he's saying. His silence becomes deafening, and in that silence, theories take root and grow. In 1997, as investigators comb through every inch of the Ramsey home, forensic technicians collect biological samples from JonBenet's body and clothing. What they discover becomes both a lifeline for the family and a source of endless debate among experts. Unknown male DNA is found in 2 critical locations, under JonBenet's fingernails and on the waistband of her long johns. The profile doesn't match John Ramsey. It doesn't match Patsy. It doesn't match Burke. It doesn't match anyone in the house that night or anyone who had known contact with JonBenet in the days before her death. The DNA is entered into CODIS, the FBI's combined DNA index system, which contains millions of profiles from convicted offenders and unsolved crime scenes across the country. No match is found. The profile belongs to an unknown male, and for years, this evidence becomes the foundation of the intruder theory. In 2008, then District Attorney Mary Lacy takes an extraordinary step. She writes a public letter to the Ramsey family formally apologizing and exonerating them based on new DNA testing. Advanced technology has confirmed the presence of the unknown male DNA in multiple locations, and Lacy concludes this points definitively to an outsider. The letter is seen as vindication. The family, vilified for over a decade, finally receives official acknowledgement of their innocence. But the exoneration doesn't last. Lacy's successor quietly reverses her position, stating that the exoneration was premature and not binding. Forensic experts begin questioning the significance of the DNA evidence. The samples are minute, described as touch DNA, trace amounts that could have been transferred in countless innocent ways during the manufacturing of clothing, during packaging, or through secondary contact with another person. Some experts argue that touch DNA is too unreliable to carry the weight Lacy assigned it. Others point out that JonBenet's underwear was brand new, taken from a package that contained multiple pairs. Could the DNA have come from a factory worker who handled the garment weeks earlier, thousands of miles away? It's possible, even probable. By 2024, the DNA has been retested using cutting-edge genetic genealogy techniques, the same technology that identified the Golden State Killer and dozens of other cold case suspects. The profile is run through expanded databases, analyzed with methods that didn't exist in 1996. Still, no match. Still, no identification. The unknown male remains unknown, a ghost in the evidence that explains everything or nothing, depending on who you ask. In 1998, after months of mounting public pressure and a stalled investigation, District Attorney Alex Hunter makes a decision. He convenes a grand jury to hear evidence in the JonBenét Ramsey case. For 13 months, 12 ordinary citizens from Boulder County sit in a closed courtroom and listen to testimony that the public will never hear. Witnesses parade through. Police detectives present their findings. Forensic experts explain. They hear from the Ramseys' friends, from neighbors, from experts on child behavior and family dynamics. The proceedings are secret, sealed by law, and protected from public scrutiny. In October 1999, the grand jury reaches a decision. They vote. The results are handed to District Attorney Alex Hunter in a sealed envelope. Hunter reviews the decision, then makes an announcement that stuns Boulder and the nation. He will not file charges against anyone in the JonBenét Ramsey case. He claims there is insufficient evidence to warrant prosecution. The grand jury is dismissed. The case remains open but effectively frozen. For over a decade, the grand jury's actual vote remains sealed. Rumors swirl. Did they vote to indict? Did they find insufficient evidence? The truth stays locked behind legal protections until 2013, when a judge orders the release of specific documents following a lawsuit by journalists. The released pages reveal a bombshell. The grand jury did vote to indict John and Patsy Ramsey, but not for murder. The charges were for child abuse resulting in death and accessory to a crime. The language is carefully worded, suggesting the jurors believed the parents knew who killed JonBenet and helped cover it up, or that they placed her in a situation that led to her death. But District Attorney Hunter refused to sign the indictment. Without his signature, no charges could be filed. He believed the evidence was too circumstantial, too reliant on theories rather than hard proof. The decision to override the grand jury's vote remains one of the most controversial moments in the case. 12 citizens heard everything, and they voted to indict. One prosecutor said no. September 2016. Burke Ramsay is 29 years old and has lived nearly 2 decades in self-imposed isolation. He has avoided cameras, declined interviews, and built a life far from the public eye. But when CBS announces a documentary special titled The Case of JonBenét Ramsey, featuring a panel of experts who conclude he killed his sister, Burke decides to break his silence. He sits down with Dr. Phil McGraw for a 3-part interview that will be watched by millions. America has waited 20 years to hear Burke speak as an adult, and what they see unsettles them deeply. Burke smiles throughout the interview. Not occasionally, but constantly. Phil asks about the night JonBenet died. Burke grins. When discussing his mother's frantic 911 call, he chuckles nervously. When shown photographs of his sister's face, he covers his mouth and laughs softly. His eye contact is sporadic. He fidgets, rocks slightly in his chair, and displays what body language analysts describe as profound discomfort. Dr. Phil asks directly about the pineapple. For the first time, Burke admits he was awake that night. He says he sneaked downstairs after everyone went to bed to play with a toy he had been assembling. He confirms he ate pineapple from the bowl found on the kitchen table. This admission contradicts 20 years of family statements that everyone went straight to sleep. When asked if JonBenet came downstairs too, Burke says he doesn't remember seeing her. He can't explain how pineapple ended up in her stomach if he was the only one eating from that bowl. He shrugs, smiles, and offers no further clarity. Dr. Phil brings up the golf club incident from years earlier, when Burke struck JonBenet in the face. Burke acknowledges it happened but insists it was an accident. Just kids playing, he says. No anger. No intent. Throughout the interview, Burke denies any involvement in his sister's death. He describes the accusations as absurd, hurtful, and baseless. He expresses frustration at being unable to live a normal life, unable to date or form relationships without the shadow of suspicion. But viewers don't see grief. They don't see anger at being falsely accused. They see a man smiling when he shouldn't, laughing when the moment calls for sorrow. Dr. Phil later defends Burke, explaining the behavior as severe social anxiety and a lifetime of trauma. Others aren't convinced. The interview raises more questions than it answers. Behind closed doors, veteran detectives who spent years on the JonBenet Ramsey case speak in measured tones. They can't say it publicly. They can't prove it in court. But the evidence, when assembled piece by piece, tells a story that most investigators privately believe. The theory goes like this: Burke, awake and eating pineapple in the kitchen late that night, is interrupted by JonBenet. Perhaps she wanders downstairs, drawn by the sound of her brother moving around. Perhaps she reaches for a piece of pineapple from his bowl, that simple act of a little sister wanting what her big brother has. Perhaps Burke, tired and irritated, reacts the way children sometimes do, with sudden, unthinking violence. He grabs the nearest heavy object. A flashlight sitting on the kitchen counter. A baseball bat from nearby. The medical examiner later notes the head wound is consistent with a cylindrical object swung with force. Burke strikes his sister once, a single devastating blow to the side of her head. JonBenet collapses instantly. She doesn't scream. She doesn't fight back. The skull fracture renders her unconscious immediately. Burke panics. He tries to wake her. She doesn't respond. Terrified, he runs to get his parents. John and Patsy come downstairs to find their daughter unresponsive on the floor, a massive head injury, barely breathing. They face an impossible choice in that moment. Call 911 and watch paramedics, police, and investigators swarm their home. Watch their son be questioned, possibly taken away, possibly charged. Or protect him. They choose protection. What follows is not premeditated murder but a frantic, desperate cover-up staged by parents trying to shield their remaining child. They move JonBenet to the basement wine cellar. Patsy, a pageant veteran skilled with costumes and presentation, begins constructing a narrative. The garrote is applied to obscure the head injury and ensure death appears intentional, the work of a predator, not a child's accident. John, methodical and controlled, helps stage the scene. The duct tape. The loose wrist bindings. Details meant to suggest an intruder. Patsy sits down with her own notepad and pen, drafting the ransom note. She writes, crosses out, rewrites. The $118,000 figure comes from John's recent bonus, a detail she knows but tries to disguise as the demand of kidnappers. The note takes time, nearly 30 minutes, because she's composing a fiction that must be believable. They wait until morning, then Patsy calls 911, her panic genuine but her story manufactured. 2026, 30 years have passed since JonBenet Ramsey died in her Boulder home. The case remains officially unsolved. Boulder police periodically issue statements claiming they continue investigating, reviewing tips, applying new forensic technology. But no arrests are imminent. No charges will ever be filed. Burke Ramsay, now approaching 40, lives a quiet life in Michigan. He works in software. He won settlements in his defamation lawsuits against CBS and others who publicly accused him. He maintains his innocence. He will never be prosecuted. Even if investigators believe they had proof, Burke was 9 years old at the time. Colorado law protects children under 10 from criminal prosecution, even for homicide. The statute of limitations doesn't apply to murder, but the evidence threshold was never met, and his age provides absolute legal immunity. John Ramsey, now in his 80s, has remarried and continues to advocate for further DNA testing. He believes advances in genetic genealogy will eventually identify the unknown male DNA profile and exonerate his family conclusively. He has given interviews as recently as 2023, calling for Boulder police to hand the case over to outside agencies with more resources. Patsy Ramsey died of ovarian cancer in 2006, never seeing the later waves of documentaries, podcasts, and renewed public scrutiny. She went to her grave maintaining that an intruder killed her daughter. The physical evidence remains locked in police storage. The ransom note, the duct tape, the cord, the paintbrush handle, all preserved but exhausted of answers. The unknown DNA has been retested with every new technology that emerges, most recently in 2024 using advanced genetic genealogy methods. Still no match. Still no identification. Multiple theories persist. Some believe an intruder entered through a basement window, though no footprints in the snow support this. Some believe Patsy killed JonBenet in a rage over bedwetting, then staged the scene with John's help. Some believe Burke struck his sister and the parents covered it up. Each theory has supporting evidence. Each has fatal flaws. JonBenet would be 35 years old today. Instead, she remains frozen at 6, her face on magazine covers, her death dissected in countless documentaries. Her case has become a cultural touchstone, a symbol of wealth, beauty pageants, media obsession, and justice denied. The truth died in that basement on December 26, 1996. What's left are fragments that refuse to form a complete picture. Before you go, if this deep dive into one of America's most haunting mysteries has given you new perspective, please hit that subscribe button, leave a comment with your thoughts, and share this video. After 30 years, we're left with an unsettling reality. Sometimes, even when everyone knows what happened, proving it remains impossible.